All right, so this is the activating strategy for day 2. And really the big takeaway from this was this equation. All right, so if we have this equation and we want to factor it easily, what we want to do is we want to take out the greatest common factor. So what do these two things share? They both have an x in common. So if we take out an x, what that means is that we're going to take x cubed and divide it by x. When we do that, we get x squared. Remember our exponent rules. We're going to subtract an exponent if we're going to divide by that same term. So x cubed divided by x gives me x squared. Negative x divided by x is going to give me -1. Okay, so now this is in factored form. And I can take each of these parts and I can set them equal to 0. So x equals 0 and x squared minus 1 equals 0. All right, and so now I can solve, and that'll give me my zeros of the function. Well, this one's already done, so there's 1, 0. And then if we add 1 to both sides, bring down that x squared and set it equal to 1, and take the square root of both sides. And remember, when we take the square root, we're going to have a positive and -1. That's really meaning that we're going to have x equals +1 and x equals -1. So those are two separate terms. So we have x equals -1, x equals 1, and x equals 0 as our solutions. Notice how there's 3 solutions, and our exponent on the original is a 3. So now we're going to kind of start moving into sketching and talking a little bit more about end behavior and how the leading coefficient and the degree kind of relates to all of those things. So in our first example, it wanted us to rewrite it in standard form first. Remember, standard form is that decreasing exponent order. Decreasing exponent order. Okay, or standard form, right? So the biggest exponent over here is going to be that -x squared. So that's going to come first. And then we're going to have that 3x. And then we're going to have that -4. Okay, so that's standard form. Cool. All right, so now we need our leading coefficient and our degree. So our leading coefficient is that term out in front. Okay, so that's going to be -1, even though there's not a number there. Remember, if there's not a number there, it's going to be a 1. So our leading coefficient is going to be -1. And our degree is our highest exponent. Okay, so if we look at our highest exponent, what is our highest exponent? It's going to be 2. And then we're going to sketch our graph. Okay? So normally what I would tell my kids in my class is if you have a TI-84 and you want to do a sketch of this, I would substitute this into your calculator. If you don't know how to do that, you can YouTube it or I can show it to you. But when you do your sketch, you really want to focus on your x-intercepts. Okay? And with that being said, we would take this equation and we would actually factor it. Okay, what we're going to notice is that this isn't easily factorable. And we're actually going to have to do the quadratic equation, which I know y'all love when I sing this song. So I'm not going to sing it today, but you're going to take the quadratic formula to help you with that. Okay, so what you're going to do is take each one of these things and plug it into the quadratic formula. So this is going to be your A, it's going to be your B, this is going to be your C. And remember, for this, you're going to leave off the x's. We're just going to take the numbers off of here. So I'm going to do this pretty quickly. So -3 plus or minus the square root of 3 squared minus 4 times -1 times -4. I apologize for my handwriting. Again, we're going to work on this videotaping stuff. And then 2 times -1. Okay, so we're going to have -3 plus or minus 9 minus 16 all over -2. And if I simplify that a little bit more, I'm going to get -3 plus or minus -7 underneath the radical all over negative 2. And that's finally going to give me negative 3 plus or minus I root 7 over negative 2. And the reason why there's going to be that I there is because if we have a negative underneath the radical, that's going to pull out an I. All right, so this hot mess, that simplifies all the way down to here. All this is going to tell me is that it's not going to touch the x-axis. That's all it's going to tell me. Really wasn't much help, but it's not going to touch the x-axis. Okay? My next thing is, I know it's going to be facing down because of this leading coefficient being negative. Okay, so I know it's going to be facing down. And now I got to figure out kind of where it hits. I would also include in my sketch my y-intercept, because if I don't know if I don't know where exactly my x-intercepts are, it doesn't really help me much. So my y-intercepts, if I plug in a 0 into my equation, that's going to give me my y-intercept. So if I plug in a 0 into this equation, I'm going to get 0 squared plus 0 times 3, which is going to give me 0, minus 4, that's going to give me negative 4. So I know at least I'm going to have a y-intercept at negative 4. Okay? Now the question is, which way do I sketch this graph? So this is really going to tell me that I'm going to have some kind of like hump over in that direction. I'm kind of get into that a little bit later. But really you want to focus on just having that sketch going facing downwards right now. Again, rough sketch. And if yours looks a little bit like mine, that's fine. Okay, we're not going to touch that x-axis though. That's the big thing. And we're also going to go through negative 4. Okay. All right, so also our end behavior for this guy, whenever I do this, I always tell my kids that imagine yourself standing at 0, 0. And if you, like this is you right here. And if you look to the left, what's happening to your y values? So as x is approaching negative infinity, what's happening to your y values? Well, they're going down. So we're going to put that as negative infinity. Oh, yes. Look at that infinity sign. No. Yeah. Okay. And then you're going to also look to the right, right? So as x is approaching positive infinity, what's happening to my y's? Well, that's also going down to negative infinity. Okay. All right, so over here, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to put it in standard form. Well, fortunately for us, it already is in standard form. Okay. And then they ask us for the leading coefficient and the degree. Well, the leading coefficient is 2. And the degree is going to be 5. Okay. And then it wants us to do a sketch of this. Okay. So I highly suggest that if you wanted to do a sketch of this, at this point in time, I'd put it into my graphing calculator. But I know that there's going to be an x-intercept at 0. And the reason why I know this is because in this equation, I can pull out an x. So what I mean by that is now I can rewrite this as 2x to the 4th power plus 3x to the 2nd minus 2. So there's going to be an x-intercept at 0, 0. And I think my battery's going to die. So I'm going to take a pause on this and come back to it.